Well, it's April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2020. 19. My goodness. I'm thinking about 1928 because that is the We Wisdom magazine that we're going to be using for some of our material in the month of April. Did you know that there was Unity 100 years ago? And they had a magazine for boys and girls, and it was called We Wisdom. And we're going to read some things from the We Wisdom of April 1928 tonight. And we'll see that some lessons just are timeless. It doesn't matter if it was 100 years ago or a year ago or tonight. So the first thing I want to read is a poem. And it's called An April Fool Joke. Because people like to play jokes on April 1st, on April Fool's Day. And sometimes I'm not sure the jokes are funny, but people do like to play pranks and play jokes on April 1st. So this is by Cora May Preble, and it's called An April Fool Joke. Today, the sun slipped right behind a cloud up in the sky, and soon the raindrops softly fell, then faster by and by, until I thought 'twould never stop. Then, very suddenly, the sun peeped over that big cloud and smiled right down on me. Today was April 1st, and so I think the jolly sun was fooling me and hid away a little while for fun. So hi, Cody, how are you doing? Are we playing any pranks on April Fool's Day? So there is a table blessing prayer in this edition of We Wisdom. So I thought I would read it, and I will post it on our Facebook page if you want your mom and dad to help you later to look at it again. So how many of us say a prayer when we're getting ready to eat? Something simple, not long. So here's a table blessing from Unity from 1928. God gives to us our daily bread and cares for us in every way. Upon the earth his blessings spread in plenty for us day by day. God gives to us our daily bread and cares for us in every way. Upon the earth his blessings spread in plenty for us day by day. So that's a good blessing to remember and to maybe try to learn for when we sit down to the table and we're blessing our food before we eat it, but because we know that all good things have their original source in God. So the farmers raised the food, and our parents shop for the food, and mom or dad or grandma or somebody cooks the food. But really, they're just channels for the good that comes from God. So I'm going to read a story from our We Wisdom magazine, and it's called Scout Manners. And I don't know how many of you are scouts, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or Bluebirds. There used to be another group. Or anyway, this is about Billy and his big brother Ben. Billy's big brother Ben had joined the Boy Scouts. And of course, Billy was disappointed when Ben said that Billy was too young to join. for Billy always wanted to go wherever Ben went. Never mind, Ben told him. Anyone can have Scout manners and live up to Scout rules. Even a young boy can be honest, brave, loyal, and trustworthy and try to do a good turn every day. Billy knew that Ben was right, but still, it seemed that there would be little fun in being a scout all by oneself, with no one to know the nice things one did. Of course, Billy was always honest, and he was brave when there was a need to be, so those things were easy. As Billy walked down the dusty street looking for something pleasant to do, he met Mrs. Gray with her 2 children. Little Jimmy was fretting and dragging at his mother's skirt, and little Sarah cried loudly as she was wheeled along. Mrs. Gray looked very tired. "Good morning, Mrs. Gray. Where have you been already this morning?" inquired Billy politely. "I have not been anywhere yet," Mrs. Gray replied. "I started to town, but the streetcar was so full and the children were so cross that I just decided to give it up and to come home. I do wish that I could find someone to leave the children with. Tomorrow is Mr. Gray's birthday, and I must get him a birthday present." Mrs. Gray stopped a moment. "I wonder if you would stay with Jimmy and Sarah, Billy. I always feel that they are safe when you are with them. Could you, Billy?" Billy liked Mrs. Gray. She was always doing nice things for him. He liked Mr. Gray, too, and Billy knew how he himself would feel if his birthday came around and there were no birthday presents. "All right, Mrs. Gray," Billy answered. "I don't mind staying. I wasn't going anywhere anyway," he added. After Mrs. Gray had gone to town, Jimmy and Sarah went to sleep, and it was so quiet Billy was dozing when a shout awoke him. Leaning over the fence were the boys that Billy played with. "Say, hurry up," called his chum Tom. "We are going down to the fire station to watch the firemen wash the fire engine. We stopped at your house, and your mother said that you might go. Chief Bangs has promised to let us help polish the brass if we will be careful. Come on." Billy looked over at the sleeping children. How he did want to go. It was not often that the boys were allowed to go into the fire station. And to be allowed to help polish the brass on the engine was indeed an honor. If only he had not said he would take care of Jimmy and Sarah. "I can't go, boys," said Billy. "I promised Mrs. Gray that I would look after Jimmy and Sarah while she went to town." "Oh, come on," exclaimed Tom. "We're going to have the greatest time. Mr. Bangs is even going to take us riding in his red car afterward. Come on. Just let Jimmy and Sarah sleep there, and ask one of the neighbors to look out the window every little while and see that they are all right. Mrs. Gray will never know the difference." Billy shook his head. "You fellas run on," he replied. "When I take a job, I finish it up right." The boys went on, and Billy was left alone. He was so lonely, he felt that he could not bear staying with the babies while the rest of the boys were having a good time. The children slept on until Billy wished that he had taken Tom's advice and left them while he had his fun. As it was, no one would even know that he had missed a good time. It was late when Mrs. Gray came home and Billy was free to go. Even Mrs. Gray's happy thanks and the big sack of candy that she brought did not ease his disappointment. As Billy came into his own yard, Ben ran to meet him. "Say, Billy, you are a lucky one, all right," he cried. "You have been elected mascot of our troop. That's some honor, believe me." Why, Ben, what is that?" Billy asked. "Oh, you see, all the troops have mascots. A mascot is something that is supposed to bring good luck. Most of the troops have animals, but we wanted to be different, so we thought we would have a boy about your size. One of the fellows went by Mrs. Gray's while Tom was coaxing you to leave Mrs. Gray's babies and go to the fire station. And at the meeting, he got up and told everyone all about it. All the boys thought that you were a pretty good scout, and they just voted you as mascot, easy as anything. Being mascot is almost as good as being a real scout. You'll have a suit just like mine, and you will get to go on all the trips we take. Billy was silent for a little while. Then he drew a long breath. Ben, he said, it does pay to live up to scout manners and to be trustworthy, even if one does think that no one will ever find out about it. So, that brings us to an interesting question. Are we on our good behavior just when somebody's watching? Or do we try to be our best self even when no one's paying attention? Do we keep our promises? Do we stick to it and finish a job? I don't know. It seems like Billy did. But what about you? What about you when there's a chore to be done and you promise to do it, and then nobody's really watching to see if you finish it? Well, I hope we all understand that being our best self is really good for us. It makes us feel good. Billy felt good about finishing his job, about watching Jimmy and Sarah, about making it possible for Mrs. Gray to get Mr. Gray a birthday present. So there are lots of rewards in doing a good job and being our best self. So I hope you are having a good week. Next week is going to be getting ready for Easter. And so next week we're going to read A Surprise for Mrs. Bunny. And this week's, we're reading from the 1928 Wee Wisdom. This is a page of little prayers that we will maybe talk about next week when we read our book, The Surprise for Mrs. Bunny. And I bet you won't be able to guess the surprise. So you'll have to join me next week for A Surprise for Mrs. Bunny. So let's do our prayer for protection. And let's do it the way we learned it last week, when we say the I am statements. So, the light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God protects us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever we are, God is, and I am. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.